Hello everybody, my name is Glenn Holton and I'm a member of the video ministry team here at First Congregational Church in Braintree. And I welcome you to our weekly reflection series, Food for the Soul. So I've been out walking here on this beautiful day and I come across this body of water really close to my house, and more about that body of water later. But I do want to just share some thoughts that I have with you today. So a while back I was watching Governor Baker's press conference right around the 4th of July holiday, and a reporter asked him what he was going to be doing during his time off. And he replied that he was going to probably be doing a lot of walking around his home, and that his wife had been pestering him to get out and walk more and see the area. And he thought that all of us in the Commonwealth should take time to explore their own surroundings, and I certainly do that. I'm in my car, going from here to there. Maybe you go from your house to church, maybe to the market and back home, and you never have a time to actually explore the area. And Pastor Susie certainly has been helping us as she travels all over Massachusetts, showing us the parks and giving reflections. And Michael has been showing you his garden and areas that we might not have been paying attention to. But I'm going to be talking about things that happen right here in Braintree and how we navigate things. So I certainly have been doing a lot of walking, and as I said, my family walks, sometimes short walks just around the neighborhood, and other times we do some longer walks. But I've always been thankful for the freedom that I have to do that. And it got me thinking about the freedom to do just that, to be able to walk outside my house and not have to be worried about anything pandemic-wise. But then I also worry about the people that don't have the freedom to be able to walk out. Perhaps those that were not allowed to leave their apartment dwelling or their house, or others that just don't have the ability to leave at all and they're trapped wherever they are. And so I started focusing about the word freedom, specifically in the Bible. And I found a number of different references, not too many, but a number of references, and the one that stuck out to me the most was from Psalms. Psalm 119, verse 45, which reads, "I will walk about in freedom, for I have sought out your precepts." So now I understood the freedom part. It is what I was looking for. And that makes sense. A lot of translations also use the word liberty as opposed to freedom. So more about that in a little bit, but I didn't know about what precepts meant. So I started looking at Google, the source of everything when you don't know, and I found out what precepts actually means. It is a directive or order issued by an authority, a writ, a command, or process. So it can be considered a guiding principle that is used to control, influence, or regulate conduct. So that got me thinking about other types of precepts. Well, one that is very clear to me is the 10 Commandments. Specifically, one commandment can be considered a precept that you must follow. Another would be, thou shalt wear a mask, or thou shalt social distance by 6 feet. So, gosh, I hope those don't become commandments in the near future. In fact, I'd love for us not to worry about that anymore. But that is a precept. So then I started looking about what that psalm actually meant. It didn't mean that we're free to walk around and even under control. It means that while you're under control, that you have the freedom to do what you want. There is a freedom to do what you want, but there's also a greater freedom to do what you should. So this would be perhaps someone's choice to not wear a mask, but they really should because we're trying to flatten this curve and get rid of the pandemic, right? But when you really look at what this psalm means, it's really not about masks, it's not about freedom to walk around, it's about freedom to do things, but do them in God's way. The liberty, the freedom is yours to take on this planet, but what you should really do is do it God's way, because God's way is perfect. God's ways are recognized throughout this psalm as perfect and right, and our goal is to follow Him. So when you're walking around and doing your daily life, following the commandments, whatever they be, following the precepts, think about doing them in God's way. So now I started thinking about, how people have been dealing with this pandemic. Some people have been totally ignoring it altogether. They think that it's just made up and doesn't exist at all. Other people have been not leaving their house at all because they're afraid they're going to catch this virus and die. And so, they're just totally holed up. So there's both sides of the spectrum there, right? But then there's the middle people. I think it's us, right? Those that aren't afraid to leave our house, but are doing so safely, right? How are we navigating this pandemic? So I thought to myself, well, let's look to the Bible. How do people from faith navigate challenging situations? And I actually found an article written by Stephen Wright, he's a minister and consult, and he basically offered 3 ways and a summary on how to navigate the pandemic using faith. And I found that very interesting. The first navigation tip was to confess that it's alarming. Okay, persons of faith tend to always be sweet and think that everything's going to be okay, but they really do need to accept this bothering them and to reach out, whether either to admit it to themselves or to admit it to someone else, whether it be your spouse or your pastor, to acknowledge that you're scared with this pandemic. That's a big step. The second navigational tip for dealing with this pandemic is to look for nourishment. And I'm not talking about going to the supermarket and buying supplies to keep you less hungry. I'm talking about how God provides you ministry. And so this article was talking about remembering the manna, and that's the bread that the God provided. So back if you remember, God nourished the Israelites when they were in the wilderness and suffering, and he provided them manna, or bread. But he didn't just deliver one holy delivery of bread for this. No, he provided bread each day, just enough for them to survive. And that's what we need to remember, is that God will provide us in certain ways, and we need to look on how he is nourishing us. One way he's nourishing us in this pandemic is that he's providing us new ways to be able to attend church and to reflect on things with technology. Certainly the Zoom meetings where we can all see each other has been quite nice. Other examples are the ability for us to safely visit friends, whether it be on the patio for a social distance 6-foot luncheon. But there's ways that God is nourishing us. And then of course there's Scripture and the Bible, and how you reflect on that Bible. So those are all ways to nourish yourself during this pandemic. And then the third navigational tip that he mentioned was to expect creativity, right? The Scripture is filled of hopelessness and despair, and then at the end of that story you hear that God provided for them in some way, changing water into wine or just providing water in general. A number of different stories we don't need to highlight right now, but God provided. And so he has done some creative things, and so we need to pray for the creativity. The creativity, I hope, will be a cure for the COVID virus, or at least a vaccine, so that we can get back to our lives and can get back to worshiping in church without any fear or worry. So that is sort of the summary of this, is that we do have ways to navigate this pandemic in faith. And we just have to remember that it's a process. People in the Bible, whether it be 3,000 years ago or just recently, have had to have patience and perseverance and wait for God to provide for them. It sometimes happened over years. So let's look for the creativity as we go forward. So that does it for me today. I'm just going to do a little more walking, and oh yeah, I need to let you know about this body of water, this pond here in Braintree, Massachusetts. So I'll be right back. Okay, here's another shot of this pond here from a different angle, and I've been pretty mysterious about just where this body of water is here in Braintree that my family walk to from time to time. So now it's time for the big reveal. If you were to just go over those trees, you're about 500 feet away, you'll find a big parking lot and the South Shore Plaza. That's right, we're right near the mall, and this is the body of water that's right there. It's actually the Braintree Dam, and over there is where the apparatus is to keep all the water in and feed it down if they ever need to and control it. So yeah, this is right in my backyard, and in the morning it's beautiful. My kids have been here for youth group to do their morning worship with everyone virtually, and we walk here from time to time and watch the sunset. So it's a nice little discovery for the whole family, and I'm glad we could share it with you as well. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of Food for the Soul. I think next week we'll be back to our regular pastors, Susie and Michael, to provide the reflections, but I certainly have enjoyed this little bit of time with you today. And so hopefully we'll see you in church. Until then, bye-bye.